I never screamed, not when they laughed behind my back. Not when my so-called best friend stole the job I had dreamed about for years. Not even when I walked into that boardroom and saw my designs, my soul being pitched by someone else, wearing my voice like a mask. I didn't scream, I just stood there, frozen. I watched them all pretend I didn't exist. My body burned, but I smiled. That's what they taught us, right? Keep it together, be graceful, be nice. I didn't cry that day. I walked out, straight-backed, and made a vow. If they were going to erase me, I would rebuild myself so loud, the whole damn world would feel the echo. I went home to silence, the kind that wraps around your chest and makes it hard to breathe. I laid on the floor for hours, no lights, no noise, just me and the realization that everything I trusted was gone. Betrayal doesn't always come with a knife. Sometimes it's a smile and a contract. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and made plans, not revenge, not yet. First, I needed to rise, quietly, relentlessly. The version of me they thought they broke was gone. And something else was waking up in her place. I deleted every number in my phone, burned old journals, cleared out my apartment. I kept only two things, my sketchbook and my anger. Both would become my weapons. I wasn't sure what I was building yet, but I knew it had to be mine. Raw, honest, unstoppable. I had spent too long trying to belong in their world. Now I'd create one where I could finally breathe. Success doesn't begin in bright rooms or applause. It begins in shadows. And that's where I lived, between invoices I could barely pay, ramen noodles, and the sound of my neighbor's TV leaking through the walls at 3 a.m. I got a job delivering coffees at a design agency that didn't even look twice at my portfolio. I smiled, nodded, and served lattes to the same kind of people who had once humiliated me. Some even recognized me. None of them spoke, but I saw it in their eyes. They knew. And that was enough to fuel me for another night of working in silence. My apartment was my lab. Every night after my shift, I sketched until my fingers ached. My walls were covered with concepts, colors, prototypes made from cardboard and stubborn hope. I wasn't building a brand, I was building a rebirth. I posted anonymously on small forums, tested ideas on Etsy. I sold one design. Then 2, then 10. I reinvested every penny. I didn't go out. I didn't date. I didn't waste time explaining myself to anyone. I was invisible to the world, but I was becoming undeniable to myself. One night, I got an email. A beer from a boutique in London had seen one of my designs online. They wanted to place a bulk order. It wasn't huge, but it was real. I printed it. I stared at it. I cried for the first time in months, not because I was sad, but because I realized they didn't destroy me. They freed me. Every betrayal, every silence, every fake friend had pushed me right into my purpose. My pain had become my blueprint. I whispered to myself that night, not as a promise, but as a fact. They will hear my name again. But next time, they'll say it with respect. The boutique order changed everything. Not just financially, emotionally. For the first time in what felt like forever, someone saw me. Not the me that had been stepped on in a boardroom. Not the me who had smiled through betrayal, but the real me. The one who stayed up all night bleeding creativity onto paper. They didn't just order my designs, they featured them, posted about them, tagged my anonymous handle with words I hadn't heard in years. Bold, authentic, visionary. I read those comments with trembling hands, like someone who had forgotten the sound of their own name. That post went viral in a small way. But viral enough, orders started trickling in. I shipped them all myself, wrapped in brown paper and quiet revenge. I knew I wasn't there yet, but I could feel it. I was no longer invisible. I created a logo, gave my anonymous shop a name. Every piece I made carried a hidden message stitched into the seams. Tiny phrases only I knew, still standing. You lost more than I did. She didn't break. It was petty. It was poetic. And it was mine. Some of those old faces started circling back. A DM here. A hey, I didn't realize it was you there. One even asked if I wanted to collaborate. I left them on read. Not because I was angry, but because I was busy building. I was too full of vision to look back at ruins. Every rejection I'd ever faced was now my fuel. Every lie they'd told about my worth was just proof they feared my fire. And then came the invitation. An up-and-coming fashion expo in New York wanted to feature me. They didn't care about my resume, just my work, and my work. It was finally speaking louder than any of their voices. If this part of my story resonates with you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. That's how YouTube knows this matters and how more people can find it. New York was noise, flashes, egos, deals whispered behind champagne flutes. And there I was alone, with a suitcase full of dreams and samples I'd sewn by hand. No agent, no PR team, just me and the weight of everything I had survived. I set up my booth in a far corner, where the lighting wasn't even right. No one knew my name, but they noticed the pieces. People stopped, tilted their heads, whispered, and when they looked up at me, their expressions shifted from curiosity to respect. Midway through the event, I saw her, my ex-best friend. The one who had stolen everything and smiled while doing it. She was across the room, surrounded by press and fake praise, her designs hanging behind her like ghosts wearing stolen identities. Our eyes locked, and for a moment, she froze. She knew. Even from a distance, she could feel what I had become, untouchable. She walked over, smiled like it was 2019 again. Asked how I'd been like the knife in my back had been a misunderstanding. I didn't flinch, I just looked her in the eye and said, better. Without you. Then I turned back to a beer who was holding one of my jackets like it was art, and that was the moment I knew I had already won. I didn't need to humiliate her. I didn't need revenge served cold or loud. My presence, my success, was louder than any scream I could have ever let out. That expo ended with 3 contracts and a feature in an online fashion magazine. But more than that, it ended with closure. I didn't need them to validate me anymore. I had rebuilt myself with the pieces they tried to shatter. Success changes things, but mostly it changes you. After New York, everything moved fast. My inbox overflowed, showrooms called, collaborations were proposed. But what no one tells you is that climbing from the ashes isn't the hardest part. Staying there is. Suddenly, I was no longer the underdog. I was a name people whispered in meetings, some with admiration, others with envy. And with that came a new kind of silence, not the silence of being ignored, but the silence of being watched, measured, doubted, and I had to make peace with the fact that even success doesn't erase all the scars. I found myself in hotel rooms with city views, trying to recognize the woman in the mirror. I wore luxury now, but I remembered when I had to choose between rent and groceries. I smiled at galas, but part of me still waited for someone to pull the rug again. Trauma doesn't ask for permission, it lingers. Especially when it's dressed in glamour and expectations. But I learned to ground myself in what got me there: grit, honesty, and refusal to shrink. I started mentoring younger designers, sharing my story, not the polished version, but the real one. The one where I almost gave up. The one where betrayal turned into blueprint. I watched their eyes widen, and I realized my voice wasn't just mine anymore. I was becoming someone's reason to keep going. That mattered more than any magazine cover. One night, I sat alone in my new studio, surrounded by racks of my work. I lit a candle, played the same playlist I used to cry to in my tiny apartment. And I whispered, thank you to the version of me that refused to break. I had turned pain into purpose, silence into symphony. And I was just getting started. I thought I had buried the past deep enough. But success doesn't just open doors, it opens portals. One day, out of nowhere, I received an email. Subject line, "Let's talk." It was from the CEO of the company where it all went down. The same company that had let my work be stolen. That had looked the other way while I was erased. My chest tightened, not from fear, but from recognition. I wasn't the girl they fired anymore. I was the woman they now wanted on their panel of industry innovators. I stared at the email for hours. I wanted to delete it, ignore it. But something in me knew this was a moment. Not of revenge, but of return. I replied with a single sentence, "Let's schedule it." The day of the panel, I walked through those same glass doors, but this time, I wasn't invisible. People turned, whispered. One assistant even asked for a photo. I smiled politely. I wasn't here to impress. I was here to witness how far I'd come. On stage, they introduced me as the visionary behind one of the fastest-growing design brands. They didn't mention the betrayal, the silence, the theft, but I did. Gently, calmly, I shared how I started with nothing. How failure made me sharper, stronger, and how silence became my power. The room was still. No one interrupted. Even she, my ex-friend, sitting in the back row, kept her eyes down. I didn't call her out. I didn't need to. My presence said everything. When it ended, people clapped like they meant it. The CEO approached me after, offering a handshake and a "We're proud of what you built." I nodded. But inside, I smiled for a different reason. I didn't come back for their approval. I came back to reclaim the space where I was once made to feel small, and now it was mine. After the panel, something shifted, not just in the industry, but in me. I stopped waiting for validation and started demanding impact. I expanded my brand into new territories. Launched a mentorship program for women who had been silenced like I once was. I told them, "You don't need to scream. Let your work be the thunder." And they listened. I watched girls from small towns and broken homes rise with fire in their eyes, wearing my designs like armor. That was the revenge I never planned but deeply needed. One night, a journalist interviewed me for a major feature. She asked, "What do you say to those who once doubted you?" I smiled, not out of spite, out of clarity. I told her they didn't see fire in me because they were too busy pouring water. But I burned anyway. That line went viral. Not because it was clever, but because it was true. The world loves a comeback, but what they forget is how many of us never left. We were just rebuilding in silence. I was invited to speak at universities. My designs hit global runways. Celebrities started wearing my pieces, and still, I remained grounded. Because success without soul is just noise. I had seen what empty power looked like. I'd served coffee to it. I'd stood in its shadow, and now I knew better. I chose legacy over spotlight, purpose over applause. That's when I realized I didn't just survive betrayal. I rewrote the ending. I turned what was meant to break me into the very thing that built me. And no matter how bright the lights got, I never forgot the dark room where it all began. That's where the fire was born. There was one drawer I never opened. One piece of unfinished business that followed me through every stage, every victory. A letter, unsent, unread. I wrote it the night they broke me, addressed to her. The friend who wore my dreams like her own and discarded me like noise. The letter wasn't angry. It was raw. It was the bleeding truth of a woman shattered by someone she trusted. I never had the courage to send it because part of me thought I'd moved on. But healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means reclaiming. One evening, alone in my studio, I lit a single candle and read the letter aloud. My voice cracked on the first line, "You didn't just steal a design. You stole my silence, my safety, my sense of worth." Every word was a wound reopening, but also closing. I cried. Not because I was broken, but because I had survived. I no longer needed her to read it. I just needed me to hear it. I burned it. Let the ashes fall into a ceramic bowl I made myself. That's what healing looks like. It's not always elegant. Sometimes it's messy, tear-stained, but freeing. That night, I slept without replaying the past. For the first time, her name didn't echo like a curse in my chest. It was just history, nothing more. And the next morning, I woke up lighter, not because my past was gone, but because I had finally faced it with open eyes. We can't erase betrayal, but we can rise above its shadow. That letter was never about her. It was about letting go of the version of me who still needed an apology. Success made me visible, but grace made me powerful. Not the performative kind, not the fake smiles in business meetings. Real grace, the kind born from surviving the fire without becoming the flame. The kind that lets you look your past in the eye and not flinch. I no longer needed to prove anything. Every room I entered knew who I was. Not because I shouted, but because my silence had already echoed louder than any scream. One morning, I received an invitation. A global award for women in design. I had been nominated. The same industry that once erased me now wanted to celebrate me. The irony, I wasn't sure I even cared. The real prize had already been won. My dignity, my peace, my name reclaimed and redefined. Still, I accepted, not for ego, but for every girl watching from a place of invisibility just like I once did. I stood on that stage in a sleek black suit, no glitter, no pretense. Just truth. When I looked out at the sea of faces, I didn't see judges. I saw mirrors. I told my story in 3 sentences. They erased me. I rebuilt. Now I design armor for women who refuse to disappear. The crowd didn't cheer. They stood, silent, moved, changed. That's when I knew I hadn't just gotten revenge. I transformed it. I had taken their betrayal, their doubt, their silence, and turned it into a revolution stitched into every thread of my work. Not just fashion, not just art, but memory, power, truth, and the girl I once was. She'd be proud. They say success is the best revenge. But that's not true. I was the revenge, my resilience, my refusal to break. My decision to build instead of burn. That was the loudest response I could have ever given to a world that once dismissed me as nothing. I didn't scream. I didn't fight dirty. I simply became unforgettable, and in doing so, I rewrote every narrative they tried to trap me in. Now my name is etched into spaces I was once kept out of. My story is taught in classes. My work is worn by women who carry the same fire I once buried under fear. And I walk through life with the calm of someone who no longer needs to be understood because I understand myself fully, fiercely. Every lie they told about me became a layer of armor. Every rejection, a stepping stone. Every silence, an invitation to speak louder through my craft. I didn't destroy them. I didn't need to. They have to live with the truth. The woman they tried to erase built a world that now has no room for their names. And if you're listening to this, wondering if your pain has a purpose, let me tell you, it does. It's not to break you, it's to reveal you. Let them doubt, let them dismiss, let them betray, and then build, rise, become the kind of power that doesn't need to scream. Because the most beautiful revenge isn't fame, applause, or even success. It's becoming you fully, wildly, unapologetically. And watching them realize they lost the best thing they never even saw coming. If you've ever felt invisible like I did, leave a comment below. I read them all. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Someone out there needs this story just like you found it today.